Welcome to Compassionate Heart Parenting. I'm Michelle. If you've ever snapped at your kids and then felt the wave of guilt afterward, or wondered why you reacted that way, you're not alone. After 15 years as an emotionally focused therapist, I have learned that parenting brings up emotions we didn't even know we were carrying. Here, we'll explore what's beneath those reactions and the small shifts that can help you respond with more calm and connection. Can I tell you about one of the most common things that parents share with me? Guilt. It's some version of, I feel so guilty all of the time. Not about one specific thing, just guilty, as kind of like a general state of being, like a low grade hum that never goes away. Can you relate? And what breaks my heart about this is that these are the parents who care the most. They are not ones who are just kind of checked out. These are the parents that are learning about their child's development. They're worried about their relationships with their kids. It's the parents who care deeply, also sometimes are drowning in this guilt. So today, I want to talk about what that guilt is actually telling you, because I don't think it's telling you that you're failing. That's definitely not the intention behind it, right? First off, you're not failing. I think the guilt is trying to tell you something even more important. Parent guilt has become kind of a new normal, and it's making our already heavy load that much heavier. It's adding to our stress. Real guilt about a specific behavior is actually healthy and helpful. It points us towards change. But the guilt that most parents are carrying is different. It's chronic. It's a constant state of never being enough. That is unhelpful. And I'm sure most of you listening wish, if you have that kind of guilt, that you could just turn it off like a light switch. I know that I have had that feeling many times. And this kind of guilt, we know it doesn't lead us to helpful change. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So let's get clear about this. Guilt about something specific, like I yelled this morning, and then thinking, ugh, that felt crappy. Why did I do that? Thinking about what happened, how you could have done things differently. That is informative. That's helpful, right? It helps us get curious, leads us towards change. The low grade hum of I'm always failing is something else entirely. So I'll share a moment with you that kind of illustrates when this hit home for me. One Sunday morning, I woke up with a plan. I was going to go to yoga. I was going to make this happen. I'd been wanting to go for a long time. I did yoga at home, which is not nearly as fun as going in a class. And my husband was encouraging me to go. My parent coach was encouraging me to go. I knew that it would be good for me. But when it actually came time to leave, and even before, like anticipating, planning that morning, okay, I'm going to go. I need to leave at 8:30. Thoughts started to creep in that were so unhelpful. What about the kids? They're not going to want me to leave. What if they cry? What if they get upset? I've already worked extra hours this week and now I'm going to be gone again. I shouldn't leave. I shouldn't leave again. So I didn't go. And later that day, the kids were fighting. My husband was watching a movie, and the guilt transformed into something else, resentment. It was sounded something like, how come he gets a break and I don't? I wish I was somewhere else. And in that moment, it kind of hit me. The guilt was not helping me. It kept me at home and it transformed into something worse. Like the guilt is bad enough, but then I felt resentful. And I kind of learned something else, that there was a cycle there that I needed to uncover. The guilt that kept me from doing something nourishing, which led directly to resentment. And that resentment hurt my relationships with my kids, with my partner, and even with myself. So I was determined to find another way. I was not going to stay home and be resentful and angry. So, what guilt actually is? Brene Brown teaches that guilt's job is to point us towards change, right? That's helpful guilt. But this kind of guilt isn't doing that job. So, what is it doing exactly? Let's look closer at the message that guilt is sending. In this yoga example, what was underneath? Parents report feeling selfish when they take time for themselves. They're worried their kids won't be okay if they step away and take times for themselves. They're worried that no one else will or can care for their kids the same way that they can. Are any of these things sounding familiar? The thing is, these are not facts. These are fears wearing the costume of guilt, right? The guilt is kind of the surface level feeling. That's how we describe it. That's what it feels like. And just under the guilt, there are fears. There are fears that are fueling the guilt. So then fear takes over and runs the show, right? It tells us, well, don't go. You don't want to hurt your kids. You don't want to do something harmful. We believe the thoughts, right? That intensifies the fear. Well, that, yeah, I was gone and I have been gone too much and they are going to be upset and that's not good. So the thoughts are running, then the fear gets intensified, then we stay home. But staying home comes at a cost. We have these unmet needs, right? We actually do need to maybe have coffee with a friend. We do need to go and be able to get out of the house. Maybe it's to move our body or do something else. And when we aren't able to meet those needs, overwhelm builds, and that overwhelm leads to resentment. So let's look at the cycle here. That overwhelm causes more stress. The more stressed we feel, the more guilt we feel, the more likely we are to have those thoughts that are unhelpful. The more we have those thoughts, the more we believe them, then we stay home. Then resentment builds, stress builds, overwhelm builds, and we get caught in this vicious cycle. And it's painful. It's a painful one that chronic guilt, if we can look at it differently, that it's actually a signal pointing to something else. So let's look at what this chronic guilt might be pointing to. One of three things, just to simplify. One, it could be an unmet need. Maybe you need rest, right? You need time apart from your kids so you can rest, so you can be a whole person and not just a parent. You need time for connection with other people in your life. Maybe you need to be outside, to be in nature, time alone to recharge your batteries. You have an unmet need and you're not getting it. So that's one. A violated value. So something in how things are going in your life conflicts with how you believe they should be going. So the value might be wanting to be a good person. And that's very general, right? So a good person might be someone that you view as never having negative thoughts or feelings about the people you love or the roles that are the most important to you, such as parenting, right? It kind of feels like, well, a good person wouldn't want to get away from their kids, or a good person wouldn't feel resentful or angry or frustrated, right? So it's like a violated value. The third one is grief for the parent you wanted to be or how you expected parenting to be. So it's the gap between who you are and who you hoped to be, or how you hoped parenting would be. Maybe you thought parenting would be easier or more pleasant. Maybe you thought you would always be in a good mood and always love spending time with your kids, and you wouldn't be able to wait for the weekend when you can have extended time with them. And then the reality is, parenting isn't always pleasant. You're not always in a good mood. A lot of times you're frustrated and overwhelmed and you're irritated and all those things. And you did not know that you would often feel this other stuff, right? That can be a grief because there's a gap between who we are and who we hoped we would be. And finally, the tool. I want to give you something to actually use when this guilt comes up. So I want to give you a four-step practice. First, notice it and name it, right? I want to go do XYZ, but I feel guilty. Just naming it creates distance from it. It gives us like that bird's eye view of, okay, this is that experience again. I'm familiar with that. So that gives us a little bit of distance to even start to notice what are the thoughts that go along with guilt, etc. So one is naming it. Two is asking yourself, what are you most afraid of if you do this thing? Instead of fighting the guilt, you're going to get curious about it. And ask yourself, oh, what are you most afraid of? I'm afraid that it'll be harmful. I'm afraid that my kids will get really upset, etc. Number three, give your guilt a voice. Take it, talk to it like it's a person. You might even imagine and give it a persona and ask it directly. What are you afraid will happen if I go? And see what it says. And let it answer. Write it down if you can. The guilt might say, if you leave, your kids are going to feel like you're unavailable, and that will be harmful to them. Now, let's look at the fear in the light because you have a little distance from it. You know that it's a fear and not fact. And you can see, okay, is it true that my kids are going to feel like I'm unavailable? Yeah, they probably, especially depending on their age, they might be upset when you leave. Will they be okay? Yes. Will it harm them? No. It's a normal part of parenting. We have time together, we have time apart, we reconnect. It is a normal part of parenting. And when we come back refreshed. But we'll get to that part in a second. Finally, reframe with facts. So sometimes our guilt and fears can be so loud and compelling that we need facts to help support us. So when you leave the house and do things for yourself, you will feel more nourished. You might be having the guilt come along with you, but you will also feel more nourished. You will come home feeling lighter, and you will be more likely to be able to show up as the parent you want to be because you'll have had a way of processing some of the stress that you're carrying and some of the overwhelm, and you'll have had a healthy, positive way to move through that. So you'll be more likely to come home as the parent you want to be, and this will be better for you and your kids. And the time that you get to spend with your kids, then you will be in that lighter, more nourished place. So, again, guilt is not a verdict, it's a compass. It's something that's trying to help us learn more about ourselves, what we're feeling, an unmet need that we might have. It is not trying to tell you that you are failing. That is most likely what it feels like. What it is doing is pointing you towards something that needs your attention, a need, a value, a grief. And when we learn to read it that way, it becomes useful instead of paralyzing. So, if you're carrying this kind of guilt, first off, I am so with you. It is a work in progress. I am not ever guilt free. I want you to know something. The guilt you feel is evidence of how much you care. It's not evidence that you're failing. It is exactly the opposite. Parents who care are the ones that these things matter to, right? All the things that are coming up. This week, when the guilt shows up, try getting curious instead of fighting it or pushing it away. Ask it, what are you trying to tell me? And you might be surprised what you find. I'd love for you to send me an email or drop me a message and let me know what your guilt is trying to tell you. And a reflection question. You could use this in your journaling. The next time the guilt shows up this week, instead of believing it or fighting it, what would you look like? What would it look like if you just asked the question, what are you afraid of? Thank you so much for listening. The light in me sees the light in you. Be well. If you are enjoying this show, please rate it and review it. This is how we will help This will help me keep the show going and help more parents learn about it so they can also feel less alone and find more self-compassion in their parenting. A reminder, this content is intended for educational purposes only and should not be used for the purposes or replacement for private psychotherapy. Compassionate Heart Mindful Life does not provide psychotherapy services in any capacity. I am a therapist, but I'm not your therapist, and this is not therapy and should not be a substitute for mental health treatment. If you need a mental health treatment, please find a qualified professional in your area. Thanks again for listening.